Okay, good afternoon. We now begin the last session of the Asan Beijing Forum 2013. We are already 13 minutes late behind our schedule, so maybe we want to accelerate our process. Hopefully we can finish on time so that you can leave this conference room and have some free time. Well, my name is Taeho Park. I'm a professor at Seoul National University. Let me introduce a bit more about myself to explain why I'm moderating this session in which we discuss the international trade issues. I'm not only teaching international trade at the university, I had the privilege to serve Korea's trade minister during the last 15 months of the previous government. In other words, I stepped down from this position and returned to university this spring. Before we begin this session, I'd like to join others in thanking the host of the forum, Asan Institute, for the invitation to the very important gathering. Let me also say that I, as an economist by training, feel very happy to see that this forum include at least one session on economic issues. I hope that discussing the economic issues in the last session does not mean that these issues are not important. Well, I think in this session, we may continue some of the discussions we had in the previous session. However, in this session, we'd like to discuss more details of the future shaping of economic order in East Asia. To set the stage for our discussion, I'd like to briefly describe the current situation about the international trading environment. First of all, as you all know very well, the multilateral trading system of the WTO and especially DDA negotiations have not made proper progress even until today. And at the same time, bilateral FTAs have been proliferating all over the world, including this part of the world, East Asia. However, maybe through realizing that the pendulum moved too far to the bilateral FTAs, things have turned around recently. In other words, recently we observed that a number of countries form regional trade agreements, like CJK, in other words, China, Japan, Korea FTA, and RCEP in East Asia, and also TPP and TTIP in other regions. At least I think this is a good sign in the sense that we may all want to go back to the multilateral trading system in the future. With this as a background, I think we are ready to start our discussion. In this session, we have excellent speakers, discussants. Well, we have to my left, as a speaker, Mr. Chen from Global Times. And after that, Mr. Hoon, member of the Korean National Assembly. I want to say that he was my predecessor as a trade minister. So he was the Korea diplomat, but he was the minister for trade almost for 5 years. And then he changed himself into a politician. But he's a real expert on trade and trade negotiations. He completed Korea, US, and Korea, EU FTA. So if you have some questions, maybe you can ask some questions to him. And then Professor Terada Takashi from Doshisha University of Japan. And Professor Jong of Peking University as a speaker. And then we have 3 discussants, starting with Professor Daojiong from University of International Business and Economics of China. And then Dr. Hankwon, the Asan Institute Research Fellow. And lastly, in our program, you may see the different name. We have a slight change in our discussants. Dr. K. Yeon-bin from Chahar Institute. He's the Secretary General of the Chahar Institute. Well, as we have done, and also I will not make any lengthy introductions for the speakers and discussants since the program booklet has detailed bios of the participants. As we have done in the previous sessions, I would like to give 10 minutes maximum to each speaker, and 5 minutes maximum to each discussant. We will then open the floor for more interactive discussions. So without further ado, I'd like to invite the first speaker, Mr. Chen.
Okay,
Please.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me say thank you to the Asan institution and especially Dr. Han for inviting me to participate in the forum again. It's good this time it is being held in Beijing, so I can spend my daytime here as a participant, and then I can go back to my office to fulfill my duty, night shift duty as the deputy managing editor of the Global Times. I'm not a scholar, so I'm not in a position to offer policy suggestions. For that, I apologize. But as a journalist, as an independent career watcher for a long time, I would like to offer my personal observation from the Chinese perspective. 20 years after the China and the Republic of Korea established the full diplomatic relations, great progress has been made in bilateral trade. The volume of bilateral trade for 2012 reached $215.1 billion. That's the figure we saw several times yesterday on the video clip. Also, it's interesting to notice that exactly 8 years ago, from say November 16 to 17, 2005, former Chinese President Hu Jintao paid a state visit to the South Korea. In the China-South Korea joint communique issued after his visit, the two countries set $200 billion as a target for bilateral trade in 2012. So when the two countries would have marked the 20th anniversary of the normalization of bilateral ties. Actually, two countries reached that target easily. And the latest statistics from the Chinese customs indicate that up to October 2013, the volume of bilateral trade reached $226 billion. This is a very impressive figure. But we have to be fully aware that there are still problems in the China-South Korean economic relations. One is the chronic, severe, adverse balance of trade, or let me put it straightforward, the trade deficit that China suffers. 1992 was the only year when China saw the trade surplus, a small number. From 1993 onward till today, South Korea enjoyed trade surplus every year. China's trade deficit with South Korea in 2012 was $53.5 billion. So if Professor Qu Xin's calculation is reliable, I should say congratulations to you, to all the Korean guests here. You made $6 while you are here, far away from your country. This is rare in China's international trade. Although Korea has a very high degree of dependence on Chinese market, and also I think this is not sustainable in the long run. Another problem, which could not be readily measured by statistical figures, is the future development trend in bilateral trade. During the first 2 decades, the bilateral trade was complementary to a large degree. But with the development of China's own economy and the advancement of the science and technology, differences in areas such as technology, research and development capabilities, production and sales of commodities, industrial structures have become smaller. The two countries will gradually see fierce competitions in major export destinations, in major export items, as well as in technologies in the years to come. What can be done to address this problem? One quick answer is that South Korea opens wider its market to Chinese products, especially agricultural products and textile products. And also, Korea should reduce various non-tariff barriers to Chinese products. I strongly understand that this is a sensitive issue, but I think it can be solved partly by a free trade agreement between China and South Korea. Nowadays, FTA is a catchphrase. We know China, South Korea, and Japan have signed individual FTA with Asan. We know China, Japan, and South Korea just concluded in August this year the second round of the talks over the proposed establishment of the trilateral FTA. But the trilateral FTA idea was considered to be still at the exploratory stage. So personally, I really don't think a trilateral FTA could be reached in any time sooner in the future. But to our delight, China and South Korea completed their first stage negotiation on the bilateral FTA in September. The first stage talks had agreed on basic guidelines for 4 areas, namely products, service and investment, regulations and economic cooperation. This is said to be a big progress vis-à-vis the bilateral FTA discussions. If a bilateral FTA could be concluded in the earliest possible time, it will greatly promote trade between China and South Korea amidst the current global economic situation. This will also put some pressure on Japan if it does not want to be sidestepped or marginalized in terms of trade. I'm sorry to our Japanese participants for saying so. Currently, it is safe to say relations between China and Japan is at its lowest point since the normalization of bilateral ties in 1972. So I think this could be and should be an opportunity for South Korean companies to enlarge their market shares in China. For example, Japanese car makers suffered greatly in the wake of the anti-Japan sentiment following the so-called nationalization of Diaoyu Island. So I wonder if South Korean car makers can fill in the gap left by the cold China-Japan relations. Also, from a geostrategic point of view, I would like to talk about another aspect of China-South Korean economic relations, which I think is of great importance and significance. It is about North Korea, a topic of common concern to everyone here. In my personal view, China and South Korea can cooperate to help North Korea develop its economy. Both China and South Korea have the responsibility and the incentives to help maintain North Korea's stability economically. It is widely accepted that the status quo on the Korean Peninsula is to the interests of each and every country in this region. Economic assistance will help to maintain the survival of North Korean regime. Implosion, or the collapse of the regime, or the so-called hard landing, will do no good to none. Will do good to none in this region. A Bank of Korea report released in July says North Korea's external trade, excluding trade between the two Koreas, amounted to $6.8 billion in 2012. Bilateral trade between South and North Korea in 2012 reached a record high of $1.7 billion. But the inter-Korean trade figure is pretty small if we consider the size of the Korean economy. The report also said that the Korean Kaesong industrial complex accounted for 99% 99.5% of this trade. To be honest, I was greatly surprised to see this 99.5 figure. Is Kaesong the only option for South Korea? Are there any other possibilities? What about the Russian special economic zone? What about the Sinju special administrative region? Both Russian and Sinju border China, and I think that is the advantage that China and South Korea can take off. I think China can play a similar role that Hong Kong used to play before China's opening up to the outside world in the late 70s. That's so-called trade diversion effect, but this is not a question to go into the details. Can big-name South Korean companies make good use of their presence in China? Can their China-based joint ventures try to sell their products to North Korea via Russian or via Sinju in the name of their Chinese JV companies? If we presume North Koreans may not like the brand name Samsung or LG or Hyundai, sub-branding is the strategic to use to sort this out. That's easy. Or can South Korean companies in China try to invest directly if there's no legal restriction? Can they try to provide other important goods such as oil, food, and electricity? I mean, this will create an all-win situation, just benefit all. The early and large-scale involvement of South Korean companies in North Korea's economic activities will constitute a major factor to facilitate the development of North Korea's economy and the eventual opening up of the North Korea. Such a level of economic integration is a great asset for South Korea when a peaceful reunification is achieved in South Korea's term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chen. I think you raised some questions about the Korea-China bilateral trade relations. Mm-hmm. Maybe after we, go around the first round of discussion, maybe National Assemblyman Mr. Kim or I can actually respond to your questions. Okay. Now our next speaker is Mr. Kim Jong-Hoon, member of Korean National Assembly. Please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to present my appreciation and gratitude to Asan Institute for organizing this very important meeting. And I'm very much delighted to be a part of this meeting and have opportunity to exchange views on important topic. Well, as I have been already introduced, I've served in my government for last 37 years as a foreign service officer. But my last 7 years, I stayed only at home, negotiating several free trade agreements with important trading partners. So without serving any post abroad, that may be why Asan Institute invited me to this panel to present my view on the topic. Since I left the government, as an elected person, I spend most of my time nowadays going around the street in my constituency, meeting people, listening to their complaints and their views, instead of reading papers and reports or economic papers. So the views and opinions I'm going to present this afternoon to you, I'm afraid maybe the one which has not been carefully updated. Having said that, before I present my view on the topic of this session, Emerging East Asian Economic Order, let me tell you what I found, the general atmosphere in world trade, particularly after the financial crisis of 2008. What I found Number one is the bigger role of government. Government has been playing a very visible hand in the market, almost everywhere in Global Village. We are very familiar to hear stepped up regulations on financial services, and quantitative easing is a daily topic of conversation in the market, and that's purely government business. And increasing demand of welfare in many countries, and most of the welfare program is run by government, and the government has to heavily involved or engaged in the market. So as an economic student still, I think the stronger the government grip over the market or the economy, the market shrinks, and the creativity of the business people or the entrepreneurship shrinks. And in addition to that, as the economic downturn is being experienced by many countries, protectionist measures are on the rise. And one good indication is the increasing number of anti-dumping cases against the Korean product, against the Brazilian products, against the Argentinian products. There's who blame on who. Countries are taking protectionist measures. Maybe there's a call from their own business to be protected from the foreign competitions. And another good indication, as Professor Bach have already mentioned, the multilateral trading negotiation, the last one, what you call Doha round, DDA, has been stalled since some time ago. And there will be a WTO ministerial upcoming WTO ministerial in December in Indonesia, but I don't think anyone has a high level of expectation whether our trade ministers can make a substantive progress in that ministerial meeting. Well, so having said that, again, we have to talk about the topic of this session, economic order in the region of East Asia. Well, there are several or many initiatives and ideas not emerging. Those have already emerged in the region. Let me tell you one by one very briefly and my view on those initiatives or ideas. Number one, ASEAN. Everybody knows it is composed of 10 Southeast Asian countries, and it's been there since a long time ago. ASEAN, 10 countries, they claim centrality. Whenever there's a topic of community building in East Asia or trade liberalizing topic, well, they claim their centrality. That means they try to play a central role because they were there in place since a long time ago. And such claim is well accepted by many neighboring countries, including Korea. But here's one question, whether they can really play a leading role for economic integration of the region. Because their aggregated GDP size in total is not really comparable to the aggregated GDP of other neighboring countries like China, Japan, and Korea. So such a small size of GDP to be asked as a what can I say, a central role in integrating economy would be very heroic. Then another one is there's an initiative since a long time ago, 10 plus 3. Here 10 means ASEAN, and plus 3 is CJK, China, Japan, Korea. And it has been not developed, but another idea has come up, 10 plus 6. So the latest 3 is Australia, New Zealand, and India. Well, India, geographically, I don't know whether they can be considered as a member of East Asia. in my mind, they are West Asia. But anyhow, with a certain considerations, they got on board on this 10 plus 6 group. And now the name has been changed to RCEP. What seems to me, there's a kind of a race between these two groups. Who goes first? And in my mind, that's good competition, fair competition. And I would welcome who would come first. But frankly speaking, no group would like to go first. There's a lot of talk, but little action. Well, now, Korea, Japan, China, or China, Japan, Korea, and in brief, let me call alphabetical order CJK. There have been, since a long time ago, kind of a private sector initiative to talk about economic integration or trade liberalization. And then it's been developed into academic gathering. So prominent professors got together what to do to liberalize trade among three of these countries. And finally, government three governments have agreed to launch a free trade agreement among three of them. But I didn't hear so far any substantive progress has ever been made. No, well, trade officials got together 2 or 3 times there, but no good news yet. And here, before I move over to next point, among these 3 countries, no one can deny that these 3 countries are very important, and those the weight of these countries in world economy is growing every year. But frankly, if we look at the possibility or the potentiality that these 3 countries go speedily to liberalize the trade among them, I think I have to say I'm quite pessimistic. Number one, there's a very outstanding rivalry between particularly China and Japan surrounding the, territorial dispute. Of course, territorial dispute, there's disputes between even China, Korea and Japan, and ongoing, disputes or controversies surrounding the issues of a past history. And all these 3 countries are, no one can deny, the people is very nationalistic emotions. It's not like a patriotism. Patriotism is to love their own country. But if you go ultra-nationalist, that means touching on hating neighboring countries. That's not good. Loving your country is good, but hating the other country is not good. And another point for me, why these 3 countries are having difficulties to make headway progress, is comparative advantage is the fundamental theory of world trade or international trade. But in my experience, this theory of a comparative advantage is hardly accepted by the people of China, Korea, and Japan because of their certain sensitivity of their certain sectors of their economy. For Korea, agriculture, fisheries. For China, I may say transparency, protection of investment, the stability of the rule. Japan, they are very sensitive in agriculture, fisheries. Well, if you try to negate this comparative advantage due to some political reasons, then that will be really difficult to persuade your own people why we have to go into trade liberalization. So all these reasons combined, I think it is quite difficult, for us to expect a speedy progress to be made in near future. Well, before I move over to TPP, so far, the ideas and initiatives have emerged. Once the idea or initiatives once emerged, then we need a driving force. A driving force sometimes push it from behind, or kind of locomotive to pull it, from front, I may say. But for whatever kind of initiatives so far I named, I don't see a real driving force being made by any countries, involved in these kind of ideas and initiatives nowadays. Well, TPP is being highlighted nowadays. Maybe the reason number one is USA is there. USA got on board. Well, USA used to be the torch carriers for world trade liberalization. And Japan joined as a 12th membership there. And the 12 countries, the GDP altogether, is the biggest group of countries, bigger than any other group of countries so far. So Korea is very much concerned and considering whether we have to join or not, what would be the good timing. And China, maybe they think how the negotiations are really going on there. And if there's a substantive progress there being made, then when would be the good time to considering going on board? But here, as I put my questions on the previous speaker, Mr. Goodman, TPP is being highlighted, number one, as I told you, because US is playing quite important role, the most important role there. But I personally have a very dubious mind about the sincerity, because they don't have fast-track authority. And fast-track, or what you call TPA, Trade Promotion Authority, is a real complicated political issue in the United States. So the fact that they don't have this delegation from the Congress under the name of whatever, fast-track or TPA, that means at the final stage of these negotiations, the political landscape in Washington, D.C. can heavily influence on, what can I say, on the final fate of this negotiation. Well, having said that, anyhow, under the preposition that this will be done anyhow, I think Korea and China have no reason to stand aloof, because this is a very substantial group of people. With every members who got on board so far have a very substantive volumes of trade. They are all trading nations. So if you really decide to stay away from this group, that means you have to run a big risk of losing your opportunity to have a solid trade relations with them. Well, having said that, then I think here Korea can play kind of role, because as you know well, Korea has a very solid agreement with the United States.
Can you speed up a little bit?
Yes, yes.
You can come back already.
I'm into the conclusion. And now that we have already launched official negotiations with China for bilateral free trade agreement, we do understand kind of a strategic consideration China has in their mind vis-a-vis this TPP initiative. So once we make quite good progress in our bilateral negotiations for bilateral FTA between Korea and China, then there can be stimulate, not only for Korea's own positions, but also for China to have a, better, what can I say, positive considerations to join TPP. Well, as my time's up, let me stop here and I will continue if there's any questions. Thank you.
Yes. We always come back to this issue. I think also some questions can be raised from the floor. Well, let me quickly turn to Professor Terada. By the way, we are missing American participant here. And unlike all other sessions, so we only, 3 countries are talking to each other. In any case, we have an American participant in the floor. Maybe later, Scott, you may join us in discussion. Okay, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Burke. Well, like other speakers, I'd like to express my gratitude to the Asan Institute for extending kindly an invitation to me. But to be frank, I was a bit confused when I got the invitation email because the conference, something concerns about China and Korea. Why I, as a Japanese, were invited to say something. But the topic is something related to regional integration. So regional integration certainly needs a third, fourth, fifth countries in addition to China and Korea. So Japan is probably most closest neighboring countries in terms of geography, probably naturally expected to join any sort of the regional integrations which China and South Korea wants to promote. So therefore, I decided to accept their invitation from Asan Institute. I had set up my own argument for this session, but I decided to change, not to talk about it. Instead, I just express my own views as sort of my own argument or rebuttal to Mr. Kim's previous presentations. Well, in this case, I have to apologize to the discussant who might have prepared your own replies to my sort of the talking point, which just I submitted yesterday, sorry. Particularly Mr. Kim just expressed his doubt on the CJK, or China, Japan, Korea, or trilateral FTAs. And he also provided us his own reasoning why CJK FTA is not feasible. And well, I think certainly the CJK Corporation, not only for trade, even other areas, despite we have already 18 ministerial meetings, including summit. But on summit, China is actually hosting a nation this year for the trilateral cooperation, but already said to be no interest in organizing summit in some areas, maybe Beijing, because that would mean Prime Minister Abe's visit to China. This is something probably China hopes to avoid. Again, if there is no summit, trilateral summit this year, who would be organizing next? And China, I heard, asked South Korea to organize it. But also this would mean Prime Minister Abe's visit to Seoul. Whether this is politically feasible in South Korea or not, this is another question. So in this case, I certainly agree with Mr. Kim's quite dubious views on the trilateral cooperation. But however, again, as a person who always believes regional integration, FTAs, and free trade is good for not only the country's prosperity, but also political and stability in the region. Let me say something which probably different from Mr. Kim's presentation. But China-Japan rivalry, yes, and everyone knows about it, as we have discussed from yesterday to today. But when it comes to regional integrations, as far as I heard, particularly, I'm not government official. I've never been involved in any negotiations. So in this case, I might be wrong. But as far as I heard from Japanese negotiators, when it comes to CJK trade or FTA negotiations, at least Chinese trade negotiators, they are not coming from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They are coming from Ministry of Commerce. And their interests are much more on trade promotion. Sorry. And it's hard. Japan and China's trade negotiators have sort of the consensus. Political rivalries or antagonism should not be hampering the trade negotiation process. I think that kind of attitude thank you very much. It's quite useful, particularly for easing the atmosphere of tensions, at least expressed at the political levels. But when it comes to the administrative levels, at least the two nations negotiated, working so hard to achieve the trilateral negotiations. I hope South Korea is joining this kind of relatively friendly atmosphere in a trade negotiation process. Number two, it was China which wanted to have a trilateral FTA. And Japan and South Korea in this case had the same position. We wanted to have investment treaty first. And in this case, as far as I heard, South Korea and Japan came together to exercise sort of the pressure on China to come to negotiation for investment treaty rather than FTA. And China was strongly resisting because investment treatment certainly touching on some domestic institutional or rules and etc. But given the Japanese and the South Korean companies investing so much in China, this was actually the government, not only government, but also industrial demands to have a trilateral investment treaty with China. The atmosphere was changed, particularly after United States promoted TPP. And in 2010, particularly under Mr. Khan, Prime Minister, decided to considering joining TPP. At that time, the bilateral FTA with China was considered, but Japan's choice was to have an FTA with the United States, although US didn't have any interest in bilateral FTA at that time. So Japan's choice was only to join TPP. It was realized just a few months ago, July 2013, Japan finally joined TPP negotiations. And finally, we, sort of university analysts, can get sort of the access to the information on the TPP issues through, of course, media or some of the government officials, statement, etc. So I don't know the change of the government in China, how much affect the trade policy issues. But however, as I mentioned, it was China who provided a strong impetus for the trilateral FTAs. So now investment treaty was done, and Japan has put this treaty in a diet for ratification. I think it should be done soon. So it's a matter of time for the investment treaty among three nations to be effective. So next one is the FTAs. China-Japan rival relations, maybe. But given China's interest in this trilateral FTA, particularly China is keeping away from the TPP negotiations, I think there is still a possibility for trilateral FTA to be negotiated. Finally, Japanese agriculture problems. Again, Mr. Kim touched upon. Yeah, it's true. The reason why Japan was left much behind South Korea in terms of FTAs. And now, Japan joined TPP, RCEP, CJK, even we have been engaged in FTA with the EU. If all four FTAs or regional integration schemes were done, the coverage of the FTA partners in total volumes of trade in both imports and exports would be raised to 83%, more than South Korea's coverage by FTAs. So again, Japan is sort of the coming back to the central stage of the regional integration politics. But in this case, we need cooperation with South Korea and China. And we need to overcome agriculture. And to join TPP, Japanese government, particularly under Prime Minister's initiative, worked so hard. And I heard the United States ask Japan to eliminate all tariffs this week, which means 100%. Initially, Japan offered 85% to other TPP member countries like Singapore, New Zealand. Again, then complained, it's too small. And Japan decided to upgrade to 95% by probably sacrificing some of the key areas which Japanese government calls sacred field. But looking at individually, it's about 600 items. Quite few are actually not necessarily produced within Japan. So in this case, eliminating tariffs on those some agricultural areas, like ton of the beef or ice creams, for example, it wouldn't affect so much on the Japanese agricultural output. So 95% is sort of the target the Japanese government decided to promote TPPs. But the United States said 100%. But this is American approach. Always, they put the very high standard and get to their concession from the negotiation partners. And again, Japan is prepared for making some other concessions, which means providing TPP partners quotas. Quotas means a certain amount of the products on agriculture could be exported to Japan without or with a small percentage of tariffs, as it happened to rice in Uruguay round. We have minimum access rice. So probably this kind of approach could be utilized as sort of the concession Japan would offer to the TPP member countries, including the United States. My point is, Japan is finally ready for making agricultural liberalization to join a sort of the regional integration politics. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Terada. I think among major trading nations, I think Japan has, on average, lowest tariff level on manufacturing goods. So if you start to open your agricultural market, then you will be in a very strong position in negotiating with other countries. Well, maybe we can come back to this later on. Let me now introduce next speaker, Professor Cha from Peking University. Professor.
Thank you very much for having me here. I feel you will not let me walk away if I don't talk about the TPP. So I designed a presentation. The title is, How Big a Deal is the TPP? It's sold at high level. We don't want to dispute that because it deals with many of these after-border issues. And is it a U.S., part of a U.S. strategy to sabotage China's rise? No, it's not. Actually, the U.S. was reactive. If you recall, 2008, it was the first BRIC meeting, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, taking place in Moscow. In response to the BRIC meeting, U.S. trade, USTR started to change the template for American FTA negotiations. They started to review, and so what the so-called U.S. coming into the original TPP proposed by Singapore, Brunei, Chile, and New Zealand was really not a whole lot more than this new U.S. template. Again, this template for American FTA, anybody who wants to negotiate FTA with America was more designed to deal with China, Russia, Brazil, before South Africa came into this. TPP negotiation process is normally talked about, described as being secretive. But are Chinese officials knowledgeable? Yes, we are, because 6 of the current negotiation members China have FTAs with China, and they brief us about it. And frankly speaking, there is also this apprehension about China being in. Why? It would mean a G2. How can you have a TPP with China in would mean an effective FTA between China and the United States, especially when you look at the future growth potentials. So there are a lot of things going on. It's not a conspiracy against China. And, if you recall, when Mr. Obama and Mr. Xi Jinping met at Sunnyland, there was agreement for the U.S. to keep China informed about the process. That's point 1. Point 2. Is China apprehensive about the TPP? No. If you look at the Shanghai Free Trade Zone experiment, by the way, there was a lot of misunderstanding in the international media of the fact that Mr. Li Keqiang, the the new prime minister did not go to Shanghai to officially open this free trade. He cannot go, he should not go. Why? Because the whole idea of the Shanghai experiment is to put the current set of approvals on hold. Who implements the current set of approvals? The ministries. If Mr. Li goes, the ministers would go, and those guys would start meddling. The Shanghai experiment is something to start from scratch. But it does implement the three fundamentals that are in the TPP. One is financial liberalization. Banks can go to the zone. Second is pre-border national treatment, pre-entry. Anybody can come in. Third is to change investment approval from a positive list to a negative list. The only two things you're not allowed to do in the zone. One is to open sex-related business. Second is internet service. You can do anything else you like. In addition to that, Xinjiang, Tianjin, Qingdao, Guangzhou, Xiamen, all these cities are all presenting their designs for copying this latest Shanghai zone plan. So in other words, you have some voices in China that say, TPP, it's against China, it's no good. But then you also have other real action things that say, let's try it out and see what happens. And now the last, is China ready to join the TPP? Let's say, okay, the US is not asking, but should China say, okay, hey, I raise my hand, I'm going to join? My observation is there are many decisive, our views are divisive. Much of that is reflected in my presentation and some of that by my Chinese colleagues. And there is no easy way to reach any agreement because they have three modalities of how China relates, four actually, to the TPP. One is, oh, okay, it's irrelevant, we don't care about it. Second is, as was said by Mr. Goodman in the earlier session, take it or leave it, okay? A third option is you slide in, very much like China joined the WTO, well, what Vietnam is getting in the TPP now, negotiations. A fourth is to China to join like Australia, like Japan, and say some issues are off the table. So in other words, well, difficulties are not just on the part of China. Now, the last point is how much of this is a big deal? It's not a big deal, If you look at the bilateral investment treaty negotiations between China and the United States, we have had 9 formal rounds. The first ever official contact on this topic was led by, presented to the US by Mr. Zhang Jinfu. Most of you don't remember who he is. This was June 1982. We have lived with the US without a bilateral investment treaty for how many bloody years now? Trade flourishes. At the end of the day, what it really matters is how we adapt, how Chinese companies adapt, how policies adapt, how the people adapt. So I don't mean to wreck the party. So the short answer is, to my own question is, yeah, it's a deal, but how big is it? Okay. On the CJK, I have 2 more minutes. I'll say something about CJK. It's very unwise for the CJK. Okay, listen to my phrasing, the vocabulary very carefully. It's unfortunate and unwise for the CJK FTA negotiations to be kept hostage to the emergence of a summit, either between Tokyo and Beijing or Tokyo and Seoul. That's my first statement. The second statement is that forums like this, so-called think tanks, or the action-oriented proposals, we must start to project an image that there is this urgency to separate CJK negotiations or the trilateral investment treaty from the so-called high political or geopolitical issues. Now, a third point about this, I would think relevant to our theme of discussion today, is that probably both, especially China, but to a lesser degree, Japan as well, need to learn from how South Korea or South Korean policymakers and academics dealt with domestic opposition to these trade and investment liberalization schemes. And, you know, you only help yourself by changing yourself. And it's, there is a lot we can learn and we should learn from the Korean experience of how you handle the competing domestic voices. The last point, I have 1/2 minute, is that when we talk about these dynamics in Northeast Asia, it's often very tempting to write off Japan, and that's very wrong. Japan continues to play a very important role in the region, in terms of the regional chain of production, in terms of the source of outflow of FDI into other regions, and most importantly, in terms of the web of commerce, linking not just China, Japan, and Korea, but also throughout the East Asian region. So I don't know if I made much of any sense, but thank you for the presentation, invitation, but at least I kept my time within 10-minute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Professor Cha, for your very unique, very unique positions on TPP.
Oh my goodness. So you're not going to invite me back?
No, we enjoy your presentation.
I try to understand your humor, what it means by unique. It's a different way of saying lousy, or?
No. Maybe a little bit different from other Chinese are saying. So that's why I say unique. But anyway, we heard 4 presentations. For the discussants, you may present your own view, but I prefer you to make some kind of comments or questions to the speakers. That'll be much more interesting to run this session. So I would like to invite Professor Dai.
Okay, thank you, moderator. And I would like to express my thanks to Asan Institute and President Han Jae-bong and the other colleagues. So I learned a great lot, and I think that our panelists are informative, and what they expressed are inspiring and constructive. And to some extent, I agree with the opinions of the panelists, such as, for example, Professor Zha. And as for my own opinion, you see, I just want to focus on, the topic of this panel is the economic order, emerging economic order in East Asia. And we should know how to define such order. What is an economic order? Why we need an economic order in East Asia? First, what is the economic order? I think that there are several core factors to affecting the emergence of the economic order, including the economic order emergence in East Asia. First is that the economic power structure shifted. That is to say, in the past, perhaps one economic power plays the most important role. And this has changed. Perhaps in the past, US, for example, Japan, and now China. That is the first factor affecting the economic order. The second factor is that the adjustment of the changes of the economic order by the unbalanced growth. That is say one great power, economic power emerge. Why does it emerge? Because the growth is unbalanced. Some states are going faster, obviously, than the others. The third is the market mechanism. And we see a market is perhaps the most impetus, most strong impetus for economic development. And in regard of these three factors, I think that the economic order, the emergence of the economic order is inevitable. First, that the great power, economic power structure has changed. Because you see China now is the second largest regarding GDP. And perhaps China is the first exporter and the second largest trader, the largest trader and the second exporter in the whole world economy. That is the one condition for the economic order to be emerging in East Asia. The second is that since China has so much power, and does China will China use such a power to play a leading role in making the order? I do think that China will. Because first, China has to. If one state, the power, the economic power of one state has grown, and it definitely means that it will meet the need of the economic development, including provide so-called public goods. For example, architectures and mechanisms for development in the region. And the third is that China now has tried to formulate so many frameworks for development in such a region. For example, the first, the China-Asian FTA. The second is the trilateral FTA of CJK, right? Korea, China, and, Japan FTA, and China, and CEPA, and ECFA. CEPA is just, the aim is just to strengthen the cooperation between Hong Kong and mainland China. And ECFA is just beneficial to both the mainland and Taiwan. And the fourth is the APEC summit. You see, if the APEC does work well, then APEC would affect 21 countries, 55% population of the whole world. And this is take into consideration that China has played in such a promotion of economic cooperation in this region, then I do think that with the shift of the power structure, with China playing the most important role in such a region, then the economic order should be established. But there will still some competitive or competitors in such a region. For example, TPP, just mentioned by many scholars. And then you see Japanese still need to compete with China for the leading role in various frameworks of regional economic cooperation. And of course, China and all the nations in such a region are facing the most crucial traditional security issues such as territorial disputes, land passages, or maritime passages or lanes, and as well as the non-traditional, security issue. For example, cross-border crimes, money washing, and such anti-terrorism, such tough problems. And of course, I just do not want to mention the dynamics. Okay, thank you. And what measures should China take, or including other nations take to tackle such problems or meet the needs of the regional economic order to be established in this region? I just make some suggestions or reflections, but I do not want to mention it now because it is not most important for my presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Tai. Let me now turn to Dr. Kim for 5 minutes. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Chairman. And I'm very glad to hear about 4 speakers' perspectives about East Asian economic integration and economic law in international relations in the region. I have some skeptical eyes that we are too much dependent on the traditional wisdom that based on the liberal ideas that the economic cooperation can be protect the regional peace and stability and can be reduced or ameliorate the regional tensions between the countries. The first one, I have raised 2 questions. The economic cooperation or economic order can be really work as a glue to the put the East Asian countries together or stimulate to the international integration and peace and stability in the region. Because I think we already enter into the era of strategic competition among the major countries or greater powers, whatever. And now the economic cooperation can be a subcategory of the strategic calculation of the big powers in the region. So I raised to another question is, as Congressman Kim Jong-Hoon already mentioned about the nationalism factors in our regions, is the economic cooperation can really overcome the nationalistic obstacles among the countries. For example, China economic development, everyone recognizes it, but at the sometimes some people criticize it, entitled as red capitalism or state capitalism. And the other one is that also we worry about protectionism whenever we call about economic order and economic integration in the region. And the second one is, in practically, can we delink political calculation and economic calculation in the era of a strategic competition? For example, Russia and China as a good strategic partner against US influence in East Asia. The best example is the Syrian case, Iran case, and North Korean case. But they also make a confliction in Central Asia for preoccupied natural resources and the negotiation gas prices with the central states. We have to think of these 2 questions whenever we think about the East Asian economic order and economic integration in our sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Last but not least, Dr. Ke from Chahar Institute. Please, for 5 minutes. Yeah.
谢谢主席。刚才说这个查老师是独一无二的，但是我认为我更独一无二的。查教授只是观点上的独一无二，我有3个独一无二。你们讲英文，我讲中文。 第二个呢，你们在讲经济秩序，我要讲一讲经济秩序的核心问题——商业文明。第三个呢，你们都是讲自己的学术研究成果，因为我不是这方面专家，我也没有，所以我讲个故事给大家听一听。这个故事从哪儿来的呢？昨天晚上我们在这儿吃饭，吃完饭以后呢，回家的路上，我儿子给我发了一个短信，这个短信里头就讲了这么一个故事。他就讲一个年轻人去一个商店去买一包烟，他拿了50块钱，买了一包20块钱的烟，这个店主呢找给他40块钱，他就把这40块钱揣兜里呢，就走了，还没走出门，店主就喊他：“哎，小伙子回来，你的烟还没有拿走。”小伙子回来，就把烟拿走了。那小伙子一想，不对，你看我这个烟没拿走，他喊我回来，刚才他多找了我10块钱。小伙子感动了，就说：“老板，你刚才多找了我10块钱，我得把这个10块钱还给你。”这个行为呢，也是店主也感动了。店主说：“小伙子，把刚才那包烟拿过来，我给你换一包。”这样，小伙子就抽到了一个真正的烟。抽完真正的烟以后呢，小伙子又感动了一下，他说：“老板，把刚才那50块钱拿回来，我再给你换一张。”那么这个故事呢，说明了什么问题？我想，这个故事就说明了商业文明的一些根本性的东西。第一，从一个商业的这个行为角度来看，这个故事告诉我们如何从相互欺骗到建立信任。因为无论是店主还是这个年轻人，刚开始都是欺骗对方，一个用的是假币，一个用的是假烟，但是到最后呢，他们建立起来一种信任关系。第二一个，从结果来看，它是一个从商输到商赢的过程。这个故事如何在任何一个中间环节停止，就是商输或者是一赢一输。只有故事走到了最后，才能是一个伤人的结果。第三点，也是最重要一点，就是从这些行为的动机角度来分析。我的看法是可以从单纯的考虑自我利益到顾及他人的利益这么一个过程。当年轻人拿到烟的时候，就是店主呢，当店主看到年轻人没拿走烟的时候，店主喊年轻人回来拿烟，这个时候店主已经考虑了他人的利益。如果店主不让拿，小伙子就走了，这个就是不一样了。那么当年轻人获得了本来就是用他所有，但是由于自己的过失而失去了这些利益的时候呢，他感动了，感动完了以后，他就把不属于他拥有的，但是实际他已经拥有的利益归还了他人，这就是那10块钱。最后，当双方都在顾及地方利益的时候呢，年轻人得到了真烟，那么店主得到了真币，实现了共赢的结果。我们在谈论合作，也在谈论竞争。西方的商业文明，竞争是主导地位的。我个人认为，东亚的商业文明应该以合作的理念为主导。那么，如何才能做到合作得更好？我个人的答案只有一个，就是让合作方先赢。只有让合作方先赢，才能达到共赢的结果。谢谢大家。
Thank you very much for your nice story. I can tell this story to my students when I go home. Anyway, according to our schedule, we want to have a little panel discussion by looking at among yourselves. But I rather want to invite questions from the floor so that we can combine everything together when you respond to the questions. So now I'll open the floor Anybody from the floor who want to make a questions or comment? Raise your hand. Yes, please. Microphone. Yeah.
Yes,
Could you identify yourself briefly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Hoon from the Renmin University of China. Yeah. And I am a PhD candidate, and my major research is on, my master is writing on the TPP and the leadership of Asia, and I'm from an Asian country. So, yes, and today it's my honor to that I can listen to many panelists here about the TPP. And I have two questions. The first is, what is the effect of TPP to the leading role of ASEAN? Although I have some of my ideas in my thesis, but I also want to deepen it and and listen to the opinion of the.
Could you repeat again the TPP's what?
The effect of TPP to the leading role of ASEAN. Yeah. And the second question is that why Korea until now not yet participate in TPP negotiation? As we know, participating TPP can help Korea to unify their various kinds of BTAs as well as to develop the alliance relationship with the U.S. And is there the element of Chinese here? Yeah, and as we know, the Korea has a very has the BTA with major countries in the world already. And is Korea afraid of joining TPP? Yeah, this means they are very independent with the U.S. in trading, and joining TPP will make Korea lose this superior in trade, and Korea just want to use the public goods in security, but not to share the in trade with the U.S. Yes, this is my question, and I want to hear from Your Excellency. Yeah.
Your second question must be asked to the Congressman Kim. Any other persons who want to make questions? When we come to the economic issues, maybe nobody want to ask questions on economic issues. Yes, back there, and then Scott.
Thank you for giving me such a chance to raise my question. I'm from UIB, University of International Business and Economics, and I just study economics. First, since just now so many scholars mentioned the economic order, so I would like to ask the scholars here or experts here. I just want to see that what's your view of U.S. TTIP and TPP? Just the U.S. start its negotiations of TTIP and TPP at the same time, and I just want to seek the ideas from the prominent experts or scholars. Just want to see their ideas about the U.S. purpose of doing that at the same time. I just want to say, when the U.S. intends to do that way, does it has the purpose of shaping the world economic order, or just prevent itself from declining in economy or in the world economic order? This is my question. Thank you very much.
But unfortunately, there are nobody from U.S. in the panel. Maybe your question could be...
I just want to know the ideas from the experts. I just want to deepen my understanding of this point.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Snyder.
I think that this panel has proven to be much more optimistic than the other panels regarding politics and security, and so this is a good note to end on. I almost hate to ask my question because it's related to the component of currency swaps as part of the economic order in East Asia. It seems that those currency swaps have been the most vulnerable to being affected by political or security tensions in the region. And so I'd just like to ask the panel if they could say something about the role of the currency swap arrangements that developed after the Asian financial crisis and how they contribute or could be vulnerable in the context of political and security tensions in the region.
Okay, I would like to collect a couple more questions. Nobody. Okay, then we'll ask our panelists to respond to some of the questions raised from the floor, or during your discussion, you want to add something, then you can do that same thing. But we'll start with Mr. Chen.
Thank you.
Please be brief. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one among the panelists who is dubious about the trilateral FTA. But also I should say that I'm not mean to write off Japan because at the same time, the bilateral FTA and the trilateral FTA are going parallel. So Japan definitely is playing an important role here. But I think when we mentioned Japan, also one of the panelists said that Japan might have made concessions during talks with the US, but I don't know, I wonder if Japan will make the same concession in the bilateral trade FTA negotiations, and also what kind of concessions it will make, to what extent. As for the swap of currencies, I think that's one way for the, from the Chinese point of view, that's one way for the internationalization of yuan currency in current account. So that's all I can say. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kim?
Well, thank you. Well, let me tell you my view on several points altogether. Number one, about Korea, Japan, China trilateral arrangement or economic integration. Well, here we talked a lot about economic integration. Well, all in all, by concept, I think this is to institutionalize the trade. But the rules are there, particularly by WTO, worldwide, what we call multilateral trading system. But some trading nations don't think that's good enough. We need something more. Then in that something more, we need a certain rule among ourselves. And when we come to successfully have an arrangement, I mean to institutionalize, then whatever kind of competition or contesting energy among us can be turned into cooperation under the rules agreed. So that's why the real fundamental background why we are talking about FTA, which is a rule, which will be agreed. Having said that, I'm very pro-trade, but whatever kind of trade issues are at hand of the people, there's a pros and cons. And my personal experience is, for the government, we need, at the final stage, we need the public support. And public support, it is expressed by their representative, which is the legislative body. For the case of Korean National Assembly, for the case of United States, that's your Congress, should endorse that agreement, negotiated or concluded by government officials. And in doing that, such public support act as the momentum to push it forward to finalize the deal. If there's no such momentum, I mean, in other words, if there's no or little public support, then for any political leader or for any trade officials, it will be tremendously difficult to put a period on that deal. That's what I experienced myself. Here, coming back to between three of us, Korea, China, Japan, I don't know whether we have a strong public support going into a trade liberalization arrangement with Japan. Not because of the economic issues, but because of non-economic issues like disputes on territory, disputes on past histories, and those publics, when they turn around and turn deaf ears to whatever the government say, it is very difficult for the government to secure the public support. And in that case, no one can say there's a momentum to push it forward. And in certain sense, on the other hand, there's an anti-momentum push it backward. Even such a good intention of the government cannot be really realized and getting back, not forward to the backward. So that much public support is important. And if we agree that such a public support is important, then all peoples in three countries has to work very hard. What is the problem and how to secure for each one of our countries, to go into a kind of public support for trade liberalization. On TPP, I really don't know because Korea is not yet joined. I really don't know about the details, but by and large, I do presume there's still many remaining issues, and still there's a long way to go. But going fundamental, I think the more the size of the economy get together. Well, this is, as I told you, this is a big group of countries, and the deeper and the wider the level of opening of the market or market access or opening of the economy itself, I think that's the better for the efficiency of economies involving in such a negotiation. So that's why I really try to support the initiative of TPP. And as I told you, if Korea stand away from such initiative, if China stand away from such initiative, then we have to run risk of losing our own opportunities of having larger or deeper economic ties with those countries get on board there already. Well, my colleague there has introduced us a very interesting story. Mutual cheating in individual transactions or contract or selling and buying. But I would say the negotiation between countries is not really one strike deal. In this case, the seller or the buyer cannot appear once again. He just got a good deal, then just disappear and never come back to the shop. That's one strike deal. But in global village, between the countries, today is not the last day of the earth. They have to get together every time, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. So the businesses are going on between countries. So we have to think about win-win. If not that's win-win oriented kind of approach, then it will be very difficult to secure a long-lasting cooperative relationship. That's why we are constantly talking about win-win relations is important between countries. Having said that,
maybe we move to the next speaker.
All right. Yes, please.
Professor Terada. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let me choose three issues to mention. One is the ASEAN centrality issues, or ASEAN's role TPP, and also U.S. and TPP. I'm an American person, but as far as I heard, it's in relation to the Japanese concession issues. And finally, currency swaps and its implications for the regional order, etc. I think the ASEAN centrality will be jeopardized, particularly after TPP has been more promoted. Well, number one, ASEAN is split. And now Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam are member of TPP. Well, Philippines and Thailand are said to be interested in joining it, but I'm not so sure about the Thai's and the actual move to join it. But nevertheless, it's currently split. Well, ASEAN centrality, particularly in terms of the RCEP is based on the so-called ASEAN centrality, because ASEAN plus one FTA partner can join it. So that's the reason why the US is excluded. If the US wants to join the RCEP, US needs to have ASEAN plus one FTA in this case, but I strongly doubt America is interested in the so-called ASEAN type of the regional integration with a number of the exclusions and exceptions, not touching on the high level of the not only trade but also the other economic rule making, like the, for example, intellectual property rights, or by even the competition policies in which the state-owned economies has been at the moment at stake in the TPP negotiations. So I think the ASEAN is now, just promoting the trade negotiations just based on who is not necessarily interested in high-level negotiation, high-level liberalizations. So I think this is very difficult for ASEAN to be unified to keep its own positions in the trade negotiations in a TPP or not. US, well, certainly in terms of economic order, we need rules and standards. I think America wants to promote sort of the rules and the standards which America has been promoting with the different other countries like NAFTA, even some of the Latin American countries like Colombia and other countries. And the point is, whether East Asian countries can abide by the rules and the standards set by the United States. And Japan, as far as Japanese, the FTAs bilaterally signed so far, we don't see any differences between the Japanese FTAs and the TPPs. Only exceptions are labor and environmental standards. But this is not necessarily so much problematic to Japan, particularly in terms of the labors. I think this may be more problematic to China, because the TPP had sort of the standards by ILO, International Labor Organizations. In fact, for example, labor union should be established to have sort of the wage negotiations. But I doubt whether the state-owned economies in China would allow the state, so the labor union to be created to have a negotiation on the wages. So I think this is the most difficult part, one of the most difficult parts on the part of China to join the TPP. So again, I think America is interesting, actually asking the other East Asian countries, would it be like-minded nations for working together to promote economic order with rules and standards which America wants to promote. So in this case, latecomer Japan needs to make concessions, because we need to get to the approvals from existing member states. So not only United States, but also Australia and New Zealand also put the demands on Japan, if other countries. So in this case, China or South Korea wants to join TPP, they would need to have a bilateral pre-negotiations with Japan. In fact, Japan would put quite strong demands bilaterally on South Korea and China. Of course, next question is whether South Korea, China would be happy to abide by some of the demands established by Japan. Very quickly, one point, SOP agreement. I think Scott mentioned this panel is relatively optimistic compared with other recessions and conclusions. It may be so. But I think the SOP agreement, what matters, SOP issues, has been quite politicized in a sense, particularly between Japan and South Korea, for example. Even this year, ASEAN Plus Finance Ministers meeting, China didn't dispatch the head of the central banks and also finance ministers. And South Korea didn't dispatch the finance ministers either. So first time, we haven't seen any progress in terms of East Asian financial mechanism this year, particularly after the Lehman shock in 2008. Every year we have sort of the different level of the progress in the SOP agreement. For example, amount of the money available, even the so-called conditionalities and imposed by IMF. So again, SOPA agreement is very important for stabilizing the relationship, but it is quite easy to be politicized, in a sense, utilized by politicians. Unfortunately, I think financial cooperation, particularly symbolized by SOPA agreements, has been falling into this trap.
Okay, Professor.
Just very quickly,
Yeah.
my understanding of the currency swap arrangements is that it reflects economic fundamentals. South Korea probably would not have done this to Japan had the Abe administration explained better or were slower in doing this quantitative easing because of the level of dependency. And the fact that China's finance head of the central bank and the finance minister did not show up at these meetings is that if you look at with whom China is trading and you look at the domestic macroeconomic policies of these partners, there has come a time when we don't need to send our heads of major departments of the state just to any meeting. So I think it still comes back to the economic fundamentals. It's not politics, yeah, but after all, money is money. Regarding this question about the order and the U.S. negotiating with Europe and the TPP, sorry to be so blunt, because you're a student, I'm a professor, you have to put up with me. Now, it depends on how you define order. And let me tell you straightforward. This notion that the U.S. is declining is so out of step with reality. The U.S. is not in decline. The very fact America, the U.S., coming after 2008, came up with these ideas of free trade, it can get members to join, is a sign of strength. It would be nice if China came up with a different group of countries that follows us. So I don't quite understand. Don't quote me in the media, right? I simply don't get it why so many people in China continue to sing this lousy noise that the U.S. is in decline. No, it's not. Of course, when you put forward the initiative, you have your own self-interest. The point is, if you can get others to be playing with you, that's your strength. Did you get that? I hope you do. Otherwise, you get an F from my class. Now, ASEAN centrality, Professor Terada and I write about similar issues. He worked in NSU, National University of Singapore. I read his work. I have a lot of respect. I do believe, I'm different from what I think what he said about the TPP having a negative impact on ASEAN, what you call leadership, he called centrality. I think he was referring to the momentums of negotiation. But in terms of actual impact on the ground, I doubt it. For ASEAN, the bigger challenge is not the TPP. It's what do you do 2015 when you have the economic community? What do you do with some real projects of what you call connectivity, simplification of visas, start to build infrastructure to connect the economy, increase inter-regional trade. Last but not least, why do you have to be so apprehensive about whatever P? Forget about whatever P. I'm not trying to be funny. If you look at the WTO or the GATT, it's the most inclusive in terms of membership. But then not all members perform equally under the WTO. The rules are equal. And why? You start to ask. So the sources of growth, the sources of dynamism are more indigenous than exogenous. I know you are nodding your head. I should shut up. I am shutting up.
No.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I will end. Let me just give some 1 minute,
1 minute
response, Professor Tai.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Yes, today I'm very optimistic than yesterday. I hope all the panelists and the partners also keep the same you feeling as to me. And I'm not the specialist in TPP and the regional economic integration. Anyhow, I have my colleague, Dr. Jong, who is specialized in TPP and regional economic integration studies. And we often talk about, and many Chinese and our friends are afraid of, they say that China should be take cautions toward TPP. But as for my opinion, I do think that economic competition is not like political competition. Political competition may be, in the most time, is the zero-sum game. But economic competition may be produce public good. For example, even TPP and other FTAs are like noodles in a bowl. You cannot tell who excludes whom. Anyhow, it is just like a group of cards. U.S. can play. China also can play. U.S. have followers. China also has its own followers. Just a competition perhaps makes development.
Okay.
That is what I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kim, Dr. Kim?
Oh, if I have just 1 minute, I'd like to continue to my argument. We talked about FTA and TPP, but if we include the RCEP, the ASEAN country and China, the big countries, the powerful countries mutually exclusive each other. If we see the SCO, the Chinese government did not want to India and Russia as a membership, just offer observer status. So if we see the international economic integration in the region, we have to always think of the strategic competition, strategic calculation, and political concerns among the big countries. Thank you.
Okay. No? Okay. Well, actually, the organizers showed a sign that we have to end the session. But I also promised that I end the session on time. But we started late, 15 minutes late, so maybe a couple more minutes I can spend with my capacity as a moderator. But you know what? I want to tell a few things before we end the session. Because I have my own ideas, but as a moderator, I didn't really spend my time in presenting my ideas. But the thing is, right now, many things are going on in parallel. Okay, but nothing has been, concluded. So we can say many things, but it all depends on the final shape of the individual integration. For example, TPP or CJK or RCEP. If you reach quite a high level qualities of economic integration, then maybe other parties pay attention to it. But if you only have a kind of group and then reach very mediocre kind of FTAs, then nobody pay attention. But one thing I would like to add one more thing is that the final goal, it seems to me, we all have to go back to the multilateral trading system. So I hope maybe TPP and RCEP in the future, if they can merge into a bigger one, we can call maybe APEC FTA or FTA or APEC, then I think we can actually talk to the EU and we all go back to the multilateral trading system. Maybe somebody asked about TTIP between US and EU. Maybe they will come up with some kind of idea of agreeing on technical regulations, standards, not much about the liberalization of the market, but they can come up with some kind of regulatory regime, which is not easy to agree. But if they produce that kind of thing, and the APEC integration is established in the future, then maybe we can go back all to the WTO or multilateral trading system. This is our hope. I don't know how long does it take, but this is our East Asian economic order should aim toward that direction. I think with this, I will end session 6. I'd like to join me in thanking the panelists in this session. Thank you very much. Yeah.
各位来宾，最后一场的会议结束了。我们现在请峨山政策研究院的咸在峰院长做终极发言，请欢迎他到台上来。Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the final session. We will now have closing remarks by Dr. Ham Chae-bong, President of the Asan Institute. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ham to the stage.
your time. Take your time. Well, thank you so much for all of you for staying till the very end. As I always say, when you organize something like this, your best friends are the ones who stay till the last session, especially after 2 such long days. It's really gratifying to see all of you still here. I was listening to the last session, and I'm always struck as a political scientist or somebody who does international relations. When we security experts, so-called, we talk amongst ourselves, the world is about to fall apart. Imminently. In imminent danger of conflict, war, falling apart. When we have the economists talk about regional integration, it's as if, what are you guys worried about? We're all becoming wealthy and ever more prosperous and ever more integrated. So I'm thinking next time we organize this next year, we have to put the trade and economic session right after, I don't know, a session on North Korea or something, so that we have a much more balanced view of what the real world is really like. Anyways, it's been fascinating and fantastic to hear so many different views from such a wise group of intellectuals and experts, and definitely the educated audience and public. I just wanted to give you a couple of breakdowns on some statistics in terms of the past 2 days of conference. We have had altogether 53 speakers and discussants participating. We've had 114 Chinese think tanks and academia represented, organizations represented, 22 Chinese foundations, and 29 embassies based in Beijing. I had no idea. 22 different media outlet came and reported. And we had about 70 students, domestic students mostly, who came. So altogether about 300, little over about 310 participants. So again, it's been incredibly gratifying. I wanted to seriously thank the Chahar Institute and the China Institute of International Studies, for co-hosting this. It would not have been possible to do this had it not been for their cooperation, their help, and of course their participation. So this was really a joint effort, and I'd really like to thank the co-hosts and the co-organizers. Last but not least, I just wanted to, as we always do at the end of any Asan event, I'd like to introduce you to the staff who'd been the real movers and shakers who'd made this thing run over the past 2 days. So can you guys come up front? This is just a partial representation. So. 이게 다야? 진짜? Seriously? This is it? We're getting so much more efficient. It used to be about twice the size to organize something. But once again, please give them a warm round of applause. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. And so we'll see you all next year at the Asan Beijing Forum 2014. Until then, thank you. Bye-bye.